Marvel Zombies just released, and with it the show made people finally reactivate their Disney Plus accounts since Andor ended. With the success of this show, I decided to watch the entire series in 46 parts on TikTok instead of ordering it. Nah, I'm just kidding, I pirated it. I realized seeing all the brutalities of this show, a very key part to this show and appeal was how brutal it was, and how it was appealing to a very mature audience. It made me realize something about superheroes that has been getting more and more prevalent in mainstream media. Superheroes are becoming very violent and brutal as time goes on. So much so that I'm shocked I'm just realizing how crazy it's gotten just now. Famous examples of these shows and movies like The Boys, Invincible, Peacemaker, Suicide Squad, and Joker just being a few of the many examples of this new trend in superhero movies. Before the video starts, I just want to say that I know that superheroes have always been brutal in comics, and I'll touch on that later, but I'm highlighting why it is more mainstream than ever, to the point where I am watching a Marvel movie and I am half expecting someone's head to explode when they get punched now. But let's start with the reason why this has probably gotten to this point. There's a few factors involved. However, the main focus is absolutely the audience. Most of us started watching superhero movies when we were kids or teenagers. We grew up with generic superheroes that are big and strong and muscular, where they say, I am like this and you can be too if you eat your vegetables and listen to your mother, which was most superhero cartoons back then, such as Teen Titans, Justice League, the original and unlimited, Young Justice, Earth's Mightiest Heroes, Spectacular Spider-Man, and the list goes on. The point being, we had a lot of regular, everyday superheroes raising us growing up. The X-Men comes out and we see that we have superheroes. We get introduced to Wolverine, and his whole thing is that he isn't afraid to let his cause rip some fools up. Then we have Iron Man, which came out, which showed us that a rich billionaire in a suit launching terrorists into buildings is actually awesome. Then after a few more years of movies of the same thing, we get Avengers, Hulk, and other awesome Marvel movies. Then Deadpool was released. This is where companies realized that they could make a superhero movie as unhinged as they like, as long as they do it right, and audiences will love it. Then we got a second Deadpool movie and it made a similar amount of money, which just reinforced the idea. This is where studios got the hint from the maturing audience that as long as you have a good story and loved character, people don't mind excessive violence as long as it's cool, which is true to a point. But I'm going somewhere with this, so just hold your horses. I'll explain everything in a minute. Then a few years later, Logan comes out, where Wolverine is no longer limited with his fatalities to a PG-13 rating. And I am by no means dissing any of these movies, by the way. I love Deadpool 1 through 3. I love Logan. These movies are good, but I'm just making a point, so just hold on. I will get to it soon. Then a few years later, a Superman horror movie was released, and I'm still shocked at how this movie even became a thing. This is the stupidest concept ever, because it goes completely contrary to who Superman is. It's just say, oh, we should have an evil Superman. Wow. I've never seen that before. By the way, I am definitely flaming this movie. Superhero horror does not work at all. Then a couple more years later, and a small little niche show called The Boys released on Prime. You've probably never even heard of it. It's so very little people even know about it. It's very underground. This is where I drew a line in the sand, because I have watched shows that are very brutal, and I can handle a lot of stuff. However, with all the movies and shows I've watched and made it through, I am saying that this show is too much. Anyways, do you see the point I'm trying to make? A generation of superhero fans that has gotten older, and as we have grown, superhero movies have grown up with us. And that's not a bad thing. It makes shows watchable and enjoyable, because if superhero movies were the same, it would just get stale. However, in growing up with us, the violence in media today has gotten to a point where it no longer feels like they are superheroes anymore. Invincible punches people's heads off at times, and he's considered a Superman-like figure. I don't remember Superman doing this. Oh, wait, actually, you know what? Hold up, I take it back. Every superhero show is trying now to be dark and gritty and as brutal as possible without getting taken off their Amazon contract. Every new superhero show, such as Harley Quinn, Invincible, Gen V, The Boys, and others, are all trying to be so violent and brutal for no other reason than shock factor. Also, I'm not saying Invincible is a bad show. I love it, just it's I'm trying to make a point here. The brutalities have gotten so bad to the point where you're not even watching a show about a superhero. You're just watching a writer talk with his boys in the pitch meeting about all the disgusting ways a person can rip someone else apart limb from limb. I think you get my point. And that reminds me of one of the other big factors that contribute to this issue. The directors and writers don't know when enough is enough, and they are trying to get crazier and crazier with their kills and their brutalities. It ties into the audience growing up because in their eyes, we have all become adults and can handle dark and gross content that they'll put out because they have a suit and cape on, and heroic music plays at the end of the episode or movie. Again, I'm not saying a show or movie that has mature audiences and stories are bad. I'm saying that at what point do we have the heroes that we grew up with come back on screen? I love shows like Invincible and Deadpool. However, when it gets to the point where every new superhero show or movie released is so brutal that I have to worry about age restriction just making a video on it, it means that it might have become an issue at this point. Because the problem also is that the shock factor will never stop increasing. We are always going to have to get a new show that is going to up the disgusting scale because they just have to top the last show. Oh, Homelander just let a whole plane of people die and fall out of the sky. Yeah, that's pretty messed up. Oh, but now Invincible goes a step further. Invincible crashes into a train, but because he is going to be blowing people up simply because they're moving at the speed of 90 miles per hour straight into him. Oh, but we also gotta go a step further. In season 3 of The Boys, we have to make Ant-Man jump inside a guy's. Do you see the problem? It just keeps getting worse and worse with time. It's to the point where every new show and movie is going to try to top the violence from the last one until all we're going to be left with is psychotic murderers for our heroes in the genre. Now, this whole argument can be torn down with the simplest sentence that every nerd has heard at least once whenever they criticize a show or movie in the slightest way. Oh, but that's how they are in the comics. Now, I'm about to blow your mind harder than Mark Blue Conquest's mind. You ready? Here it comes. Just because it's in the comics doesn't make it good. Yes, I know. It's an absolutely insane revelation you just come to. So please sit, have a seat, and let me explain this concept. Just because it is in the comics does not mean that it's going to be a good story or will be a good trait of a character, because this is a little bit of a crazy hot take, but not all comics are S tier and not all characters in comics are flawlessly written. And if comics are this brutal, and they all are as brutal as The Boys or Invincible, then there is still a problem. Because if you're turned off by insane gore, you will no longer like comics. This is coming from someone who reads and loves comic books. So no, I don't go for the argument that because it's in the comics, that makes all the problems in the movie okay. Because that argument is ultimately flawed, and I can just reverse it and say, well, that's not how a character is in the movie, so this comic is stupid. You see how dumb the argument becomes once you reverse it? Oh, Black Panther gets his strength from his suit in the movies and technology, but he still has the herb. But in the comics, his suit doesn't have any abilities or special explosion features, so this comic sucks. Do you see the problem? If the comics are good and the movie is not, it is not the comic's fault that the movie is the way it is, and if a movie is good and the comic is not, it is not the movie's fault for the way it is. It falls on the director, the writers, and those who adapt the comics to the movies and the direction they take. And the direction they are taking with a lot of superhero projects is bad because they are doing way too much with the brutality and violence, and it's getting out of hand to the point where you can't really tell who the good guy or who the bad guy is based off how the fights go nowadays. Anyways, I had to go on that little rant because it really angers me at this point. So, to wrap this up, superheroes are becoming too violent and too out of control with the brutalities. However, At the same time, the best superhero movie all year to come out gave me hope for the future: Superman. This movie was both comic accurate while also sticking to an original story and giving us a great movie without the brutality that Man of Steel had. Cry me a river, Snyder fan. This movie shows us that directors are learning from their mistakes and returning to the roots of the peak time of Marvel and DC, where heroes were actually helping people and not all edgy anti-heroes. The industry is making their adaptations brutal, but maybe the love for this movie will show people that we don't need to go 1,000 miles further with dark and gritty heroes. Maybe all we need is a little hope, and maybe all we need is a fantastic hero who doesn't have to kill to save the day. Oh no, not this again!